Welcome back to another episode of We Don't Know What to Watch. And with me, as always, is the Rock to my Hulk Hogan, Kyle Mulford.
Hi, can you smell what I'm cooking?
Yes, and let me tell you something, brother. I'm Noah Saturn.
What you gonna do when these 24-inch pythons come looking for you? I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing okay. So before we get into this, the movie we watched was Fighting with My Family, which is a wrestling movie. And Kyle, do you have a personal history with pro wrestling, or?
Um, I watched the 1980s WWF Superstars cartoon, whatever it was called. With Hulk Hogan and Junkyard Dog and all them. I watched a little bit of wrestling when I was a kid. I knew all the wrestlers, like I said, Junkyard Dog, Mick Foley, Hulk Hogan, and Macho Man Randy Savage. So yeah, I grew up knowing all of those characters. And then I wasn't really into it as a kid, but I'd watch occasionally. And then when I went to college in the late 90s, I met a new friend there in my freshman year. And actually, him and most of the people on the dorm floor were all big wrestling fans. So we got into, for a couple of years there when I lived in the dorms, we'd watch whatever show was on Sunday. It was either Sunday or Monday. It might have been Monday Night Raw, that we'd all gather in a room or whatever and watch together. So I had a couple of years there, 2-3 years, that I watched it in college almost weekly. So
Nice.
So I've got a little bit of history, but like I never got into it so much that I'd pay for like pay-per-views and all that stuff, or the WrestleManias. And we did have some. There was one, I don't remember if it was my freshman year or my sophomore year of college, where a bunch of the guys on the floor, I didn't go, but like a bunch of them ended up going to a WWF, because it was WWF still back then, I think. I don't remember when they changed that. They went to a match. It might have been in like Cedar Rapids or something like that. And so they were all like, and I remember this because all of them were making posters in their rooms with their doors open, and every one of them were using Magnum 44 markers.
Oh, I can smell them just this.
And I swear, like, I think the whole dorm floor got high off of those markers that night.
Nice.
It was insane. So many Magnum 44s being used at the same time. So that's basically my history. Like, just kind of a loose history with it. I enjoy watching it. It's like a soap opera for men.
Yeah, even in the film they call it a soap opera with spandex.
Yeah. So what about
It's
you?
X-Men comics.
What's that?
So it's the X-Men comics.
Yeah, that's true.
Uh, Never watched wrestling. Never really cared much for it. Like, I can understand. I get bits and pieces from like cultural just osmosis by just being around. I'm sure, but I can appreciate wrestling. I just, my high school English teacher was like a really big pro wrestling fan, so occasionally she would talk about pro wrestling in class, and that was always pretty funny. It
Nice.
was like a
It's
kind of person like you would not think they would be a wrestling fan at all.
I think it's fun if, like I said, when I was a kid, I watched it a little bit, and I watched the cartoon mostly, and that had nothing to do with wrestling. It was just the wrestling characters. But I had a lot of fun in college, because if you have friends that you watch it with on a weekly basis, and everybody's into it and into like the quote unquote storylines of the characters, it can be a lot of fun. Like it really can,
Yeah,
if you're watching with a group of friends every week.
because it's so like exaggerated and so much bigger than life. It is really fun because like the character of like a Macho Man Randy Savage is always all the crazy insults that they'd sling at each other, like the character of The Rock or the character of John
Yeah.
Cena.
Oh yeah. You know what? Mean woo, Gene. I remember
Thank
all the
you,
catchphrases from the 80s and 90s.
thank you, Rick.
Step into a Slim Jim. Oh wait, that was the commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So it's fun. Now, what about this movie?
Yeah, this movie, Fighting with My Family, it is the sort of underdog sports story about the real life pro WWE pro wrestler Paige.
Yeah, and apparently the Rock produced this movie, and he apparently saw a documentary called uh, something wrestling fighting with my family. So the documentary was essentially called Fighting with My Family too, but it came
Yeah,
out in like
it's the
2012 before she even went through all the NXT and WWE and all that stuff. So like
mhm.
they must have tacked on more to the story for this movie, but he saw that and ended up meeting her after that. And then eventually told her that he wanted to do this movie about her life. And I think that they did a good job with this.
Yes, and great cast, just great. I really enjoy the family's dynamic because this is they're kind of all in on wrestling. They're weird, but this is kind of like their one thing that they're all really passionate about. And Paige, our main character, is played by Florence Pugh.
This
And
is
also,
the first movie that I really noticed her in, and I watched this back in 2019. That's when this came out, and I was like, "Who's this girl? She's good." And then she blew up after that. Like within the next year, she was in Little Women. She was in Midsummer. She's going to be in the Black Widow movie, and then
mhm,
then in the Hawkeye series that's coming out on Disney Plus. So she blew up after this.
yeah, and then Nick Frost as her dad. He's great. He's having a lot of fun. I always like when Nick Frost shows up. This is kind of that British tough guy, but also like clearly is a family man too. He plays that
Yeah,
well with his beard and his hair, and then
his mohawk and
mhm.
giant beard. And then the mom's played by Lena Headey, who most people are going to know as Cersei Lannister from Game
Yeah,
of
I was
Thrones.
surprised at first that it was her. It definitely feels like this is a character she would do for fun.
Yeah, and she did have fun. That was the thing, is the cast really did have fun. The one person in the family that maybe wasn't allowed to have as much fun but still did when the scenes called for it was Jack Loudon, played the brother Zach, but
Hmm.
he had a different role to play. Where
Yeah.
So this movie is about this family in Norwich, England, and or yeah, and they I they're big wrestling fans, and they wrestled. Like the mom actually wrestled under the name Soraya, and then she named her daughter Soraya. So like just they're huge into the WWF and or well WWE now, and they have their kids growing up doing this. One kid is the older brother, who you find out during the movie is in prison at the time because he didn't take it well when he didn't get into the WWF, and he went on just drinking and fighting and everything and ended up in prison. But then there's the other brother Zach, and then Paige, which actually her name is Soraya, and then she goes by what like Fiona or something like that, and then
Brittany was her wrestling name,
oh
and then
Brittany, and then she became Paige. But um,
so I guess for the sake of the film, we're just gonna call her Paige.
Yeah. So the brother Zach was huge into wrestling, like his parents, and she, when she was like, I think in the movie, she's a young kid, and her dad is
Like
like, "I
12
need
or
you."
13. I need you to fill in the spot
Yeah.
because the family runs like this sort of minor league local wrestling thing.
Yeah, and I think she was about 13, and I think in real life she was about 13 when this happened. She wasn't as into wrestling, but then she kind of got into it. Well, it was more her brother's dream to be in the WWF. I keep calling it. Sorry, I grew up as WWF in the WWE,
In the
and
WCW.
no, uh, in the NWO. Um, but they both try out for the WWE, and she makes it, and he doesn't. And then then it goes into he gets kind of bitter and he's upset. And like you finally realize by the end of the movie, he's upset not because she made it and he didn't, but because he knows that she has what it takes to do it, and he doesn't. He doesn't have that. They keep calling it the spark. You've got
Hmm.
Vince Vaughn as the trainer. I think I think that's kind of an amalgam of different people,
Yeah.
because it's one of those where it's like you don't want to put all these different characters in here. Let's just make this one person. So
Yeah, so that way she could have like a sort of a consistent mentor
yeah, but
throughout her training program. Yeah, he functions as, for lack of a better word, like the football coach
yeah,
in town, trying to recruiting the young talent and also sort of trying to get them to work through the organization.
Yeah, and he's good in the role. It's funny because like around this time was when he was in Hacksaw Ridge too as like a
Mhm.
sergeant, and like so like he's got like this drill instructor with a little bit like he gets to play the funny insults too. So like I think it fits him really well, and I actually like him in both movies.
Yeah, I liked his character a lot in this film.
But one thing we didn't mention at the beginning of the movie was them establishing like their little wrestling thing where Zach, the brother, he kind of trains a bunch of neighborhood kids that don't have anywhere to go and all that. And he picks them up in a van and goes around the neighborhood and picks them all up, takes them to help teach them wrestling. And he even has a blind kid that he's teaching.
Hmm.
So I mean that's really cool what he's doing. And it turns out like you watch the the where are they now thing at the end and it says, that he actually the blind guy that he trained actually went on to become a professional wrestler, which is really cool. But it's that led to there's several funny lines in this movie. And one of them was when they're all training and Paige is wrestling with a bunch of them because she kind of helps train them all too,
Hmm.
and one of the guys gets behind her and she's like, "Oh, gross," and like walks away. And they're like, and then the mob comes through and she goes, "Oh, and she just walks by. She goes, "Another stiffy?" They're like, "Yeah."
Yeah, so they make the guy do like a bunch of push-ups.
Yeah. It was just funny. It was how she like the line was delivered so well because they all were like, "Oh, you got another stiffy?" Like this is bad. And like and Zach's like, "Well, mostly because you're finding my sister attractive."
Yeah, there's very a lot of kind of friendly trash talking in this family.
Yeah.
Teasing, but definitely you could tell it comes from a real place of love.
And, and I love, and speaking of like that kind of stuff, is like I love the Nick Frost and whoever the other guy was, like around his age in there when they're in the office and he's trying to get him a gig wrestling somewhere. He's like, will you take this to the face? He's like, I don't know. What does it feel like? Whack. It's like,
Yeah, hits him with a trash can
will you
lid.
will you take a bowling ball to the bollocks? It's like I don't know. It's like just try it. Okay, on the count of three, one, boom. Just
Yeah.
he'll do it. Yeah, Nick Frost is great in this movie.
Hmm.
And then Zach also has a girlfriend that he ends up knocking up, so he has the parents come over and meet his family.
That's a great very scene because they're kind of like these very, restrained, probably upper class or at least middle class,
Yeah, and the dad
normal,
is actually played
normal
by
people.
yeah, the dad is played by Stephen Merchant, who wrote and directed this film. So
Yes, and Stephen Merchant is. I love it whenever he shows up in anything.
yeah, he's so awkward in this movie. It's hilarious.
Just like
But
this weird mustache too. Just.
yeah, they're more posh and prim and proper, and like the wrestling family is all just vulgar
Hmm.
and I love the story of how they met. It's like, yeah, I was just got done with a 25-year sentence, and it was, oh, what were you in for? Violence,
Mainly
mainly
violence.
violence. And she was about to kill herself with some pills. And then we found each other, and then we found wrestling, and that saved us.
Mhm, yeah, and their relationship really is sweet. So like they really do love each other. They really do have this as their family.
Yeah, and well, watched a couple like I watched an interview where the real Paige met Florence Pugh, and then she was also talking about how she's like, oh, watching Lena Headey in this movie, she's like, that was totally my mom.
Hmm.
So that's pretty cool. And then apparently her dad didn't want Nick Frost. She said he didn't want Nick Frost playing him because he didn't know who Nick Frost was, and he's like he wanted Ray Winstone. And th-
Hmm.
and then and then he saw the movie and she quoted him as saying, "Oh, Nick Frost was pretty good, wasn't he?" So yeah, but it sounds like it's a like just a very loving family and just fun and even though they've got like criminal backgrounds and criminal past, like they really
Hmm.
care for each other and they really care
Yeah, they
for
care. Even though the money isn't necessarily the greatest, but they're doing what they really love.
well, and there's a running gag like, oh, if this place doesn't pick up, I'm gonna have to go back to thieving again.
Yes.
So, but during that dinner though, it's great because what's his face? I can't remember the character's name, Vince Vaughn's character's name. He
Yeah.
call he calls them up during dinner and says, "I saw your tape that you sent in to us, and we'd like." And so they're all cheering, and the and the other the parents of the girl are going, "Oh, is what is this all about?" Is like they're talking about wrestling. Is like, well, that's all fake, right? Nick Frost's like, I say what?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fun scene with the trainer calling them up in this dinner,
In
and
the
they're all,
middle of this tense dinner scene, yeah.
and then even the daughter of the posh parents is like screaming, "Yes, you get to go try try out." But that comes to a good scene where The Rock, of course, had to cameo in this movie he
Yeah,
produced.
he shows up almost like a fairy godmother, like sort of the Gandalf figure. He shows up when he's needed,
Well,
when he leaves.
I like that the movie actually opens with footage of him wrestling. Back when he even had hair, they had like old footage of him, and then it like panned out, and it was the two kids younger watching him on TV. So it's like, let's open up with The Rock. But then they go to do the tryouts, and they end up meeting The Rock in the hallway, and that's a really great scene though, because they sit there and keep asking questions, and Zach is like, every time The Rock walks away, he's like, "Rock, rock, 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 rock." He's like, "What?"
Like, yeah, like how do you win over a crowd? And then I like that scene because then it shows how he can turn into this wrestling character, turn
just
it on and off.
just on a dime, yeah. But then I like that's where we first see Vince Vaughn's character, and he just calls over. He's like, "You here for the tryouts?" Yeah. You don't just stand around. What does it say? You can't just sit here hang out with The Rock. What are you, Make a Wish kids?
Yeah.
It's like that's a great line right there. Then of course they pick Paige and not Zach, and so the rest of the movie is just dealing with that, like her going through training and doubting herself, and him going through kind of depression. He has a kid, but he has no joy in his life because it was his dream to be in the
Mhm.
WWE. And she's trying to fit in where like all the other women who are trying to get in were all models and all this stuff and don't really know how to wrestle. So she's frustrated, which is which was kind of cool, like because I did enjoy the scene where she finally thinks that they're talking about her behind her back, and they're like, "No, I'm talking about my kid." And oh, I didn't know you had a kid. Well, yeah, you just assumed we were
You
here to
never
shake our
asked.
tits and ass. So yeah, because she was kind of high and mighty because she knew how to actually wrestle, and she didn't actually give these other girls a chance. But then I liked their relationship too, where that
It
really
is really
built.
nice that they do eventually become really good friends.
Yeah, and they help each other out. When
Mhm.
she's having doubts, she talks to her brother, who eventually comes around to encourage her at the very end. Because he actually starts down the path that his older brother did, and does the drinking, picking a fight in a bar,
Mhm.
and
But is luckily stopped by his family before anything gets too bad.
yeah, and then when they do that, then Paige chases him down in the street, and they have this talk, and it was a really good talk where it's like, he's like, "You don't know how it feels to have your dream taken from you by your sister," and then she came back with, "I didn't take it from you; they chose me. Like, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't their fault. They chose me."
Mhm.
So that was a good scene, and then it goes into kind of a montage till the end of the movie.
Yeah, this is definitely really sweet and sort of the film kind of and just like any good sports movie, I guess it climaxes with, a big match or a big game. In this case, her first big shot and kind of the main roster of the WWE going against the reigning Diva champion AJ Cole.
Yeah, and she gets called, they after all the training and everything, there's the ups and the downs, Vince Vaughn telling her to quit if she can't hack it, and but then she comes back, and you get
Just
all the
like
ups and downs.
LeBron, with the big.
Yeah, and then they finally he's like, "Oh, I'm going to take you to WrestleMania 30, and we're going to go have some fun finally." And so they go, and she gets called up to like a big skybox with, and The Rock is in there, and he makes a call to her parents, and so it's like, I liked the little joke hey, this is The Rock. And Nick Frost is like, yeah, right. And I'm Vin Diesel. And The Rock's like, well, I hope not, because of the whole feud with the
Yeah,
Rock and
that
Vin
was.
Diesel in real life. But and then Nick Frost eventually hangs up on him, but he's calling to let him know that the
Like,
night
no,
after.
Dad, it really is The Rock.
Yeah, she finally talks. No, nope, you're really talking to The Rock. But he's making the announcement to her and to her family that she gets to wrestle for the first time in the WWE the next night. So, and I think that I read somewhere that that conversation actually happened, but it was, instead of telling her the next night she was wrestling in the WWE, it was, he had a conversation, he brought her up with for a conversation to tell her that he was going to make a movie about her.
Hmm.
So I was like, that's kind of cool. And that scene was really touching too. It was just like talking to the family, and then the phone conversation ends with Nick Frost. I love you, Rock.
I love you too.
But yeah, then after that, Zach finally comes to his senses and starts training the kids again. That's a cool scene where he goes to pick them up again and says, "Hey, what are you doing? Let's go," you know. and and then you cut to Paige having a panic attack before her big match, and her brother FaceTimes her and talks her off the ledge. And then you go off, and she has her first match in the WWE and wins the belt in her first match.
Yeah, so it's really sweet, she does do so it follows, I guess, a sports movie formula, but also I guess what makes this one different to me is the fact that there's given equal time to her brother and what he's going through and how he has to realize, all right, I may not realize this dream to be an absolute pro at the top, but I am a really good coach. So I can use this and do the best coaching I can to help other people realize their dreams.
Yeah, and that was another. There's this movie, like I said, not only just funny lines, but there's a lot of really just good lines in it. Because there was another one where their older brother Roy comes out, gets out of prison, and then Zach and Roy are running, and they start talking about how he didn't make it, and he goes, and the older brother says, "Well, she had something that you didn't have," and he's like, "What's that?" And he said, "You as a coach." You know, and like, well, I think he just said you. So, I mean, and then that's when he realizes, yeah, I'm the one who got her there, and I can get other people there too. So, there a lot of really good heartfelt moments, and the end was good. And I actually watched it after watching this movie. I popped on YouTube and watched the actual match, and it was similar. In the movie, she freezes up before the match and never even talks, and then afterwards has this whole "I did this for all the freaks out there," blah blah blah. Well, in real life, it was kind of the opposite. She actually comes in and talks to the other lady, and then the lady like still does end up slapping her. Another female wrestler, one of the divas, AJ Green or something like that. No, AJ Green is a director, right? AJ
Yeah,
something. But then they fight, and she wins. And instead of having some speech about how she did this for all the people out there that are freaks from England and blah blah blah, she actually won and just ran off the stage with the
nice.
belt. Because what they don't show in here, just for dramatic effect, is the fact that she was going through the NXT program. Well, she was, by the time she hit that match for the WWE, she was already the NXT champion
Yeah,
in the female division. So she already had a championship, and she ended up, by getting that belt at the WWE, she's the only woman to hold the NXT and WWE women's championships at the same time.
nice.
So, and I think she's only supposed to be 18 in the movie, and I think she was like 21 in real life when she did it, but she was still the youngest woman to hold the title in the
Hmm.
WWE. So what they changed for that match was minimal enough that, they just
That
left
makes
out
sense for the film. Yeah.
they just kind of shortened her NXT career in the film and made it look like she really didn't have one.
Hmm.
But she went through that for a while before she went into that match. So like she actually, because that's the other thing is, in the movie when she goes to that final match, the crowd just like is silent and like they don't know who she is. Well, in real life, she already had a huge fan base
Hmm.
by before going into that match. So But, for dramatic effect, it really worked. I think the only thing that didn't work for me with Florence Pugh's performance, though, was when she did that little scream after a move, and she did it like twice in the movie.
Mhm.
It looked too forced and silly.
Didn't bother me, but yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, but I mean, if that's my only complaint, because all
Mhm.
of the performances are wonderful in this movie.
Yeah. So, would you recommend this movie?
Oh, I'd highly recommend this movie. I saw this when it came out, so I was actually excited to see it again when we spun this one.
Yeah, I
Um,
missed it when it came out, and then yeah, I definitely really liked it too. So highly recommended.
yeah, this is probably one of my highest recommends lately for most of the movies we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of heart, like you said, they focus not just on her, but how her transition into WWE affected her whole family, and they gave, like you said, equal screen time to everybody. It was just really well done. But yeah, high recommend from both of us. So,
I guess now we're moving on to our next segment, which is double feature, which is where we talk about what would make a good double feature with this film.
and that's a good question because I forgot to even think about this. Do you have anything? I might not have anything this week.
I don't really know that much about wrestling movies, but I can feel like this is a sports story. With for an aspirational sports story, I feel like it is very feels closest to me plot wise, at least kind of how beats worked, or I guess structurally, it felt closest to like honestly, it felt closest to like the Rocky movies. So I'm gonna recommend Creed because I really liked Creed, but
Okay,
that's more would be a more recent comparison.
that works. I might not have anything. Just I'm drawing a blank on anything I would any thematic pairing with this. Because yeah, I'm the same way. I watched a lot of wrestling, but it's not a lot of wrestling movies either. So it'd have to be more a thematic match.
Hmm.
But you know what? This is such a high recommend. You don't even need a double feature. Just watch this movie.
Although there was that one time that John Cena showed up in an episode of Scooby Doo. You could watch that.
There you go. You can watch No Holds Barred with Hulk Hogan and Tiny Zeus Lister.
Nice.
there's there's my double recommendation. Watch that one first because it might not hold up. uh, all right. So anyway, let's go on to our final phase here and spin the wheel.
Yeah, we got to know what we're gonna do next.
Uh, I think I'm just gonna go all genres. We haven't picked a genre in a long time, but
Yeah, so let's hopefully we can get another gem like this one.
so we'll go ahead and spin here. Okay, let's get the description. First, I'll say it says it's on Tubi TV for free, Pluto TV for free, Plex TV for free, and IMDb TV for free. So a lot of free places. No one has any excuse not to watch this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it- in the future, the Japanese government captures a class of ninth grade students and forces them to kill each other under the Revolutionary Battle Royale Act. I wonder what this
Nice.
is.
Battle Royale. I remember I watched this one. I actually went back and like read the book of this in college. It was a lot. It was a lot of fun because I remember that was kind of when the Hunger Games films were sort of finishing their run. It was like, oh, it's just like Battle Royale, and then of course now like Fortnite uses that same Battle Royale format, even with like the islands slowly getting smaller.
And then you got the wrestling that uses the Royale Rumble.
Exactly, it's all connected. Yeah, Battle Royale.
And then over in England, they eat the El Royale with cheese.
Stop.
Uh, this is actually this. Well, this is on Real Good that we spin this, so it actually says "want to see." It's on my want to see list already. So looks like it's time to finally watch it and knock it off my
We're gonna
want to
have a
see
lot. We're
list.
gonna have some good stuff to talk about there. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've heard good things about this, and I've been excited to see this one for a long time. So until then, though, you can catch us on Twitter at AwesomeKM.
I'm at Noah_Saturn. That is spelled Satern.
And we're on Instagram at We Don't Know What to Watch. You can email us at We Don't Know What to Watch at gmail.com. And until next time,
Until next time, I really could smell what The Rock was cooking, and it was delicious.
let's get ready to podcast.
Whoa!